Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive Podcast. I'm William Trapp. If you don't know, remember me. I know it's been a little bit, but just getting over some sickness. It's been a crazy year. Probably the most sick I've been in my life. But all over that now, so that's good. Today's episode, we're going to talk about working in food. Now, it sounds like a weird topic, but a lot of people work in food, either fast food, restaurants. There's a lot of food is a big contributor in the work factor. I think of ideas, I'll come up with them and we'll talk about them. So working in food, this will also relate to my food series on YouTube, for the next couple places that I will do, which you'll see on YouTube after this. You'll understand. I'll get into the aspect on those videos as well, but you'll understand this as well. So when I first was looking for work, there was not much. Very few places. I was not a hands-on guy, so I kind of want to be simple, make the money, and all that. But back when I first started work, minimum wage was my first job was $9.75, and I have worked my way up since. So one of the first places I went to was a place called 16 Handles. The manager there was, she wanted my mother to make a contract saying that I'm allowed to stay there until midnight on school days because it was, I guess, illegal for under a certain age. And then every time I went to go back in, the manager was never there. So my first actual job, I worked at a place called Baskin Robbins. I think some people have heard of that more than 16 Handles. Wasn't expecting it. It was literally me, one other person, and then the owners. I worked from once I got done school till about 6:00. Majority of the days, and then if I worked on the weekend, it all depends. Usually I worked nights. Sometimes I worked in the afternoon. Kind of made my own schedule. So I worked there for almost a year. And the reason I didn't work there for a full year was because I told my boss, hey, I'm trying out for baseball. I need this week off. And he said, okay. I proceeded to go to him saying I didn't make the baseball team. Mind you, this is my senior year. This is a whole nother topic. And he's like, all right, I'll get in touch with you. Week went by, went back in. I'll get in touch with you. Another week went by, I'll get in touch with you. Ended up being almost a month. I didn't hear from him, and I'm like, okay, he just laid me off. He knew I knew it was going out for baseball, so I need a few days. And then when I didn't make it, he essentially laid me off. So after a while, I was just like, all right, screw it. I went in, I got the necessary paperwork, and that was it. It was what it was. So where my high school was, it was literally down a hill, and it was right there. So it was like every day to work, I brought my backpack and another backpack with jeans and sneakers. Because when I went to school, I wore sweatpants and boots, so I couldn't wear that to work. That had a dress code. They had a shirt for me every day, but of course, I'm a bigger set dude, so they didn't really have my shirt size, so some of the shirts were really tight. It was terrible look, really was. So after I got laid off, then I went to college. So, I was looking for a college job, but which I got. That's, again, different story. Then when I came back home for the summer, I was like, I need a job. And actually, the first place I said I ended up working at 16 Handles. Now, this I worked up until the pandemic, so about almost 2 years, on and off 2 years. Working at 16 Handles was better this time. Well, I didn't work there the first time, but the management was a lot better. So I actually applied when I came home for a weekend. And then, of course, as soon as I got back up to school, the boss calls me. He's like, hey, can you come in for an interview? I'm like, I'm still up at school. I just got back to school, still here for like another 3 weeks. So And then it took me a while to find him because he owned multiple stores and try to track him down. And then I finally got in touch with him. And he gave me a job. I worked June, July, and August. And he knew I was in school. And I mainly worked the weekends. But where I lived to the store was walking distance. So he was, and then the person that opened mornings, I showed, what's the word I'm looking for? Not acceptance. I excelled in my job. And trust, there we go. He trusted me to do something that, probably wouldn't, that he doesn't even trust the other workers. So there was one person that worked days, and she was the only full-time employee. And the store opened at noon, and we had to be there at 10. So it would take, 2 hours to open the store, plenty of time. He asked me to come in, help with her to open up the store. And, I helped with the store opening. I did nights. I did a lot. Then I went to college, came back for a week in November, and I worked my butt off for that 1 week. Came back for December. I worked. Came back in spring worked, and the summer. So that was 2019. He gave me responsibility. There was a point where I was doing almost everything. I worked essentially till open to close sometimes. But mainly I worked mornings, because management was not good, or the assistant manager wasn't good, and kind of ruined everything. And full-time, she left, and then he needed someone open, and I was the open person, and he never understood, because there's sometimes I would show up at 11. He did not care. As long as that store was open by noon, he did not care. There's times I showed up, 10:30. I made sure I was there. But I got my job done. I knew what I had to do. I literally walked in and put my AirPods in, listened to some music. Doors were still locked, so I knew no one was coming in, and just did my job. So I did that for about 2 years. And in 2020, right before I went back to school, he hired a new manager. He was becoming a full-time owner, and he hired a new manager. And luckily, I was good. I had a good relationship with him. And I said he had 2 other stores. He had one in my hometown, one in Great Neck, and then one in Jericho, I believe. It was a distant one. Good thing I still had a good relationship. So I came home. I texted the new manager, "Hey, I'm coming home. I need a job for, I need some hours." Kind of find out she's hired more people, cut everyone's hours, and just be like, "We don't have a position for you. I didn't know you were coming home." Complete lie. Called her, left Texas, and I even called him. He said, "Call her." I'm like, "I did." So working food is not easy. I did have my times. I'm a very good with people. I'm very social, so I made relationships with a lot of people. A lot of people came in a lot to both those places that I worked at. And there's some people that are rude. When I worked days, it wasn't busy. I kept the store clean and neat. You had your few people, but usually if it's like after school, you're talking like 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock of straight mayhem. And these children don't care about your job. They care about just essentially making it worse. So that made it rough. And there was one day that some lady came in, and the store was a complete mess. My boss was there too, and I literally just took a breath, because I just had 100 children come in through and destroy the store, and I just took, nice big old breath. And then a lady comes in. It's like, "This store's a mess. I want your name." I'm like, "I'm not giving it to you. I just had a crowd of children come through. I just took a breath. Please leave me alone." And I then started cleaning, and she left. And again, my boss wasn't happy because we lost customer, but I'm like, "Listen, I just had children come through. You got to give me a second." And that's kind of the same that was at Baskin-Robbins. It was right next to the middle school and high school, so you can't really, it was like, you had Baskin-Robbins, you had a Rite Aid, You had 60 handles. You had a burger place, smash burger sandwich, or that. So it was just a plaza, a strip, whatever you call it. It got busy. It did, especially on Fridays. No kid had a care in the world, and now those kids are now working, and hopefully they deal with what I dealt with. So, but again, that was ice cream and frozen yogurt. Not nothing that I couldn't handle, but I tell myself I will never go back to working in food. Even if it's the last job availability, I will not work in food. It is terrible. I give props to everyone that works in the fast food industry and restaurants, because they're not nice people. And I know I can be difficult sometimes. I do. If anyone has seen my orders for certain places, they can understand. But there's also the aspect of it's on a screen. And I understand. My girlfriend worked in food as well. She worked at Tim Hortons for almost 3 years. Errors are made. They really do. But, I see it as like, I know I have a complicated order sometimes, but it's on the screen. If you just take the time to read the screen, you won't mess up. I know errors are made, and maybe like you grab you go to grab something, like, no, we don't need that, and you just kind of drop an inch. That's whatever. Not like the end of the world. But just take your time. Sometimes. I know sometimes it's lunch rush, dinner rush. It's crazy. You can't really take your time. But some things just right in front of you, and you got it. Like, I worked at Baskin. I took people's, I did, everything was in front. You saw, taste test, then I made it. It got crazy when it came to shakes, because we only had 2 blenders, and I think we had 2 blender machines and the 4 blenders. So it got crazy. And that coworker, the coworker I worked with at Baskin, he was full time. They worked 6 days a week. So the one day he didn't work, we split our tips. So one day he didn't work, I was glad, because I got to keep all my tips. When I was at 60 Nails, we used to be like community tips. You make your tips, but the boss always told me if you got like a 5, a 10, or 20, or 50, that's yours. But if you got change or dollars, it just split between. Then it came to the point where the tips, we all agreed that the tips would be emptied out each shift, and then we would split. So, and my good buddy Justin, I worked with him. I actually got him a job at 16 Handles. I'm like, we need people. And I trusted him. I know he was looking for a job. And I think both of us to this day still have a key to that store, because we were in charge of opening and closing and taking care of everything. It was great. There was mornings that, and there was a point where, like, if he wasn't working or I were working, like, we would cover each other if we needed to. There was, I think, one morning I was running late. He was already there. I'm like, what are you doing here? I got this. And I didn't care. He didn't care. We were both getting paid either way. So yeah, I get props. I said people work in food, and that's their first option. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do. You got to find a job and work it to start out. But if you can avoid working in food, it is what it. I praise you. I applied to a liquor store too. I know that's food, but it's like beverages. And the boss knew my uncle, and still wouldn't. I applied multiple times. I called him. It was a nightmare. So some people, the help wanted sign stays up all the time. They don't need help. They just want you to waste your time, in my opinion. Because when I moved, I applied almost everywhere. I wasted my time. That's exactly what I did. I literally called people at 1, and then leave messages, talk to people, and then I give them all day that day in the morning. Got nothing. So you may see help wanted sign. Sometimes they actually meet it, sometimes they don't. But it is what it is. So again, the deep dive into this all is be respectful of the people that work in food. It is a hard job, and some are harder than others. So sometimes just have a little bit of patience for people that work in food. It's not always their fault. There's been plenty of times I go through a drive-thru, they don't have something. I don't ever take it out on them. It's not their fault. I always get explanation of why it is what it is. And sometimes, oh, the truck isn't here. I can't control the truck. That's not my problem, or not. That's not my fault. So I can't take it out on them, or they ran out of something. Short staff. Sometimes people are short staffed. That kind of is what it is. So, but yeah, if you take the deep dive into it, working in food is not easy. I worked in food, and then I also worked at a Halloween store. So I worked 2 different jobs at once. Just because I know it was a seasonal job, a little extra money. I was, again, as I always said, I'm always about the money. I know I'm still about the money now, but times have definitely changed for that. So, but I worked 2 jobs, and then of course, I was thankful enough to keep my 16 handles job for almost 2 years, and then of course, when the new manager came on, I still had a good relation with my boss. So with his other stores, I went there, hopped on a train. It was 10 minutes, and it was essentially a block down. So, and then COVID hit, and I didn't have a job. And then of course, when they finally reopened, I was going back to school, and I had a good relationship with the people in the Great Next Door, and they're like, "We need you to work. Can you please work? We need some help. We love you." And I was like, I'm helping out my uncle, it just, and I'm going back to school in 2 weeks. So what can I do in 2 weeks that'll make a difference? Because I left when I first got the job at 16 Hours. I left to go back to school. I came back, and there was one morning we had to clean the machines. The machines were behind us. We filled them up, and you self-served. They were so disgusting because no one cleaned them. I cleaned them before I left, and I had to clean them again, and they were worse 3 months later than they were before. And then there's things that were put into play, and majority of my coworkers didn't do it, and it frustrated me. I tried to get the assistant manager job, and well, you're at school. I have a laptop. You gotta tell me what to do, and I can do it. And also the assistant manager there, he worked 2 days, didn't care, and essentially screwed over. He went manually into my hours and removed them. I'm like, you cannot remove hours I've already worked. I literally took pictures when I clocked out every day, so that if anything was a discrepancy, because you would see it every time you log in, log out, or clock in, clock out. There's a discrepancy. I would go after him. So, and other things that happened, I lost hours because other people didn't do their jobs, and then they blame me. I'm like, no. There was one day, I was like, I think it was a girl's last day, didn't care one bit. She was in charge. I'm like, no, you're not. I have not seen you till today. You are not in charge. No. Again, I've already worked 2 months. Last day, and joking around, I was doing majority of the work anyway, and I just sent them home. I'm like, I got it. I don't need you. And then there was another time they just wanted to leave, and the girls left, and this is when I lost hours. And then I just did everything myself, and I did the best I could, and then I lost hours. I'm like, it's not even my fault. They didn't even tell me how to do this. They left. I was like, you got this? Yeah. So, and there's times I was called on a day off to fix an issue. They didn't call the assistant manager. They may have called the owner, but then they called me because I lived about 10 minutes walking to get to this store. They trusted me that much. And it was what it was. I wasn't full-time. I was part-time, but I definitely got decent hours there. So, and ever since then, I haven't worked in food. I got unemployment. I worked at a state job, City Field, Madison Square Garden. Now I'm in security. Excuse me. But I'm not working food. And I hope my son, as you all know, doesn't have to work in food. If he does for a little bit, just got to bear through it. If you can do it for a year and then you want to quit and find something else, I'm all for it. But if you give it a year, that is what it is. I make good relationships with my boss real quick. I show the customer service so that, they can trust me. And then I can keep my job. You know, some people just, they want a job just to make money, and then they don't care. And it is kind of what it is. So, that's all I got really for this one. You know, this just kind of was working in food. And again, I kind of reiterate a little bit and kind of go into depth into each job. Next two YouTube videos will be about 60 Nails and Baskin Robbins. And I got a third one, Ralph's Ices. If you haven't heard, that's a Long Island thing. That I never worked there, and I'll explain why I never worked there. It's actually sexist, to be honest, and I'll explain that in that video. So, but yeah, you know, I know a lot of people that worked in food. It just is what it is. It's a majority. If you're looking for a job, the first thing is like food, fast food, restaurant, small town. You know, it's not like, you know, yeah. Sometimes you get lucky, you find something that isn't food, but majority of the time it is food. And I know it's tough. I've been through it. My girlfriend's been through it. A majority of us probably have been through it. But if you can deal with it, you can do it. I know there'll be good days. There'll be great days. There'll be good days. There'll be bad days. It's just how working in food is. So, that's all I got for this episode. Remember, guys, we're on Spotify and YouTube. I'm working on Apple Music still. They give me a few issues, but once we get that, we'll be on Apple Music. So remember, whenever I upload, 9 o'clock on Spotify, 9:30 on YouTube. So you can actually see what's happening, even though there's nothing happening on this end, but you can hear it. Leave a comment, follow, sub, do whatever. You know, I know I'm getting out there. I actually got an interesting group of people that do listen to me when I do load up a podcast. Right now, it's 100% male, is what I've seen through my stats, all from the United States, and an interesting range of people that I've gotten the feedback on. So if you guys did enjoy, please let me know. I greatly appreciate it. I'll catch y'all on the next one.